All right, everyone, welcome to class 3. We're going to review a few things from class 2, including the command line. So I'm going to share the slides for it. You see my screen? Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay, awesome. So, in the last class, we covered a bit of like Kali Linux. We covered the ethics. We did a class discussion. And then I think, yeah. Oh, sorry, my bad. The command line we actually even covered in the first class. Is it? Yeah, we did. We had some. I remember giving you guys links in first class. Was that right? For command line.
Are you talking about links to practice, like for the game and stuff?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
that
right.
I think you provided that in Discord.
Okay, all right.
If I
Okay, that's what
and
I
yeah,
read.
and you
Okay.
provided that last week.
Last week. Okay, let's see. Then I should have included it somewhere in the slides as well. Let me make sure if I see. Oh, no. Let me make sure. Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You have questions?
Can I be heard?
Yeah, you can
Okay,
be
good.
heard.
I'm pretty sure I got hacks on the.
Okay. Yeah, keep speaking. We can hear you. Okay. All right. So, yeah, well, I think maybe we lost Anthony. Okay, so the thing I want to bring up from the last class is I shared these links on Discord, but these are great beginner tools like Ubuntu Linux has like a command line for beginners tutorial. So definitely, if you are new to command line, definitely go through that. You wanna be able to find your way around it and not feel like you're lost with the command line. And really all in all, you probably need to know 10 commands at the most and 20 to be very effective. Uh, but how to apply them and how to go around it, it just takes some experience and time. And for the manipulation and that sort of stuff, I highly recommend this game called as Over the Wire. It is like a game. There are several other games in Over the Wire, but you want to kind of start with the Bandit. And so this helps you kind of get commands. So commands you will need to solve, let's say level 0 is ls, cd, cat, file, du, find, things like that, right? And so you kind of work your way through the levels. And again, do this at your spare time. You don't need any of this for the class, but this is if you were to kind of, level up your command line, this is sort of the best way to do it. All right. Zach, you have a question?
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, so it's actually my first time being in class. I believe I missed the first week of the class. And I was wondering if this is the link that you're talking about for those who are actually, attended the first class or who are is just actually, level 1 beginning for the commands that you just explained.
The class 2, these links we covered in last class.
Oh, class 2. slides
Yes.
you already covered in the first class. Now we're actually in class 3. Is that correct?
That's right.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So I'm already a little bit behind. So I need to. Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Okay, no problem. All the classes are recorded, and you can find the links for the recordings in your announcement page
Thank
of Canvas. All right. Okay. So this is the part I would recommend you guys to kind of do if you're new to command line. I know we did a bit of intrusion detection last class. This class, we're going to try to play a game as group, which gives you an idea of like, in incidents and like how do you kind of like actually deal with incidents. Um, we talked a bit about saving information after an incident as a forensic, and then we covered cryptography. Any questions on cryptography? Does anyone remember what a Caesar cipher is?
I have a question, which is if we wanted to learn a bit more, like for example, in the lab on Try Hack Me, we had to use some password crackers. And in a couple of those, there's like Python scripts that are going in and using particular combinations of salting and hashing based on I don't know what. But if we wanted to learn more about how you determine like what the right approach is for a particular hash, are there resources for kind of learning a bit more about how the cryptography works and how you would go about if you find a hash, figuring out the right method? I mean, for this try hack me exercise, it really was just like kind of following what other people said without really understanding what was going on to make it work. And if I wanted to understand what was actually going on, do you have resources for that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a specialized field. Um, cryptography is like a pretty deep mathematical field, if you will. Um, so uh, the um, the resources I'll share a couple, but like I until you kind of get familiar with computers and working with them, um, going down the cryptography, the math part, for like at least the purposes of hacking is a little bit harder. Um, you should learn about like common hacking, common hashing algorithm, common encryption algorithms. So the way I would kind of recommend is like, if you want to go deep on any of the algorithms, and we talked about a few last time. If can anyone remember? Did we talk about like a RSA, asymmetric key cryptography, right? We talked about AES, symmetric key cryptography. So those algorithms and techniques, I would recommend to like, learn more about it. Different types of hashes like MD5 or SHA-256. You will, you can learn about it, different types of encoding. But the way you want to do it is in context of other things. If you kind of start learning it separately, you will lose sight of like what it is, because it like specific resources on cryptography gets mathematical too quick, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, where I ran into it was on the simple CTF pay or room on Try Hack Me, where there's a Python script that you have to download to use. And in my case, it didn't work. So I had to use a different tool to do the final step of cracking the password. And to do that, there's like a bunch of different, combinations. I never would have been able to figure it out on my own. And that's all. I'm not interested at this point in getting into the deep math of cryptography, but more
Yeah,
about like how
uh,
to at that very superficial level.
yeah. So I'll share a couple links on Discord.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
There are tools where people, you can plug in a hash and they'll kind of help you guess what it is and what tools might be best. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. That's the right
Um,
level for me.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no worries. Awesome. Okay. So let me. Okay. So the way maybe we would do so today's class will cover a fair bit of tools, and the reason so first of all, I know like maybe not a lot of people have submitted the lab. How many of you guys submitted your lab already? One, two, Danny, Craig. Okay, I do. Yeah. So uh, one of the things about the lab too is awesome. So like, yeah, I see half of the class. So I want you guys to kind of like really give it a try and submit it. I will cover some parts of the lab today, but the reason I did mention, like, it's a hard lab. Don't worry about it. Just do as much as you can. Time box it. Because today what we're going to cover is a lot of like tools which you kind of would have like found out about or talked about in the lab. And so today we will cover tools for pen testing, and we'll specifically cover Nmap, Nessus, SQL map, as on the tooling perspective, and then we'll cover this methodology which is specifically around design of software called threat modeling, which helps you build secure software. And we'll do an incident response exercise. We might have a guest show up for a little bit as well. So we'll cover a fair bit in that sense. But before I jump into the content for today, let me bring up. Let's spend like maybe 10 minutes on the lab, right? Let's see. Okay. Okay. Sweet. So, let's maybe talk a little bit about the lab right now. I'll show you guys a couple things about the lab, and then we'll come back to this lab again, because I want everyone to also try it again. So I don't want to give the whole answer. Maybe we'll do part of it. So did everyone watch the video?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
twice.
Yes.
At
What
least
did you
more than once for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. What did you guys think of it?
The video is good,
Look
and
at goes in depth.
I thought the video was good. It seemed like it was a little bit older, and there were some version issues for me between like when I went to run the commands, like some things were just a little bit different. And some of the tools that he used, I wasn't able to use, so I had to find different tools to accomplish the same thing. Like I couldn't get GoBuster to work, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have this similar problem also, and I found out there was a dir command in front of, so found out the hard way. So eventually I searched on the internet, and also Craig helped me a little bit on that too. So great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and thank you, Craig and Aaron and Andrew, for trying to help me. I I still couldn't find my word list. So yeah, I got stuck there. I even, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
a little
So
frustrating.
It's the
No.
blind leading the blind for sure.
So so this is one interesting part, like, and I want you guys to kind of think of this as like, you're in a dojo, like you're practicing, what what it takes to kind of like, get good at this art, if you will. So one of the things is exactly as you mentioned, information gets old too fast in this world. So you will go find on internet a lot of tools. There will be a lot of people on different forums, and that's basically how hackers work. Is like someone's like, oh, I was able to crack this way, and people would talk to each other, but at the same time, like within a couple days, someone might have fixed it, or someone might have taken the tool off the shelf, right? So one of the things which a lot of people end up doing is what they do is like, they kind of hone their own tool chain. Some people call it, the kill chain, the tool chain, the Swiss Army knife, what have you, right? But you wanna kind of you figure out your go-to tools, but they might be very different from other people's go-to tools. Because you have them, you're comfortable with it. Sometimes people write their own tools, right? So there is all aspects of it in this. So some of the tools get older, outdated, or like some of the tools which worked before don't work anymore. That's just how the trade works, and it's completely fine. The idea is like, it's a trial and error, but you get smarter. You're trying to get into a system which you're not supposed to be in, right? So that's how it works. But it also kind of gives you the idea of the uh, the game, the defense and attack game of it, like what it is. All right. So I'm gonna like, I know some people had issues, so I'll cover the lab like in like really overview. Right now we'll keep going deeper into it, because a lot of these things will be covering today and in subsequent classes as well. So let's start the attack box, right? And so I know some people were like, oh, the attack box is slow, it takes a long time. That's completely fine. I'm not expecting you guys to finish the lab, but that's also going to be real life, right? Like when, very many times you run a million tools which never finish. Very many times you try a lot of like these paths which are dead ends, right? And that's okay. But you learn something from every try you do. So you just don't blindly start doing things, right? So, um, you know, uh, kind of keep that in mind. So so what's the premise of this machine, right? Like this machine, the 10.10.91 is a machine which has two user accounts. And so these two users, one of them is a super administrator, one of them is like a regular user. And as you kind of learn more about this machine, you figure out that, it's very easy to get, or it's relatively easy to get into the account of the regular user. But it's not easy to get into the account of super administrator. Which is very likely the case of real world, right? Like, a company has like junior employees, senior employees, and IT people. Sometimes like, you can get into like a junior employee's account because, they had like a sticky somewhere with their password on it, right? But, you can only do so much with that account. Then you kind of learn a little bit more about this machine that, oh, you can use the junior employee's account to figure out how to get into the, super administrator's account, right? So on and so forth. But even before that, what I want to kind of show is, you bring up the attack box, right? Like, and this is, you see my screen fine, right? Like, so the attack box just came up for me. So the one concept a lot of people have trouble with, or some people had like confusion, is like which box is what, right? So this machine here, when you start the machine, that machine is the machine you are attacking. Is that clear? Right? So, and this IP is the IP of this machine. When I go up, I get this other IP after I start the attack box, and this is the box I am using in this environment to attack this active machine. So there are two entities. You're using one machine in the attack box, which is attacking, right? It is your kill tool chain, if you will. This is what you're going to use to crack open this machine which you are attacking. And this is the machine you want to work with, right? And so if I just on this box, I kind of say, this is HTTP of this machine. Sorry. The 10.191.69. So this is the machine I am trying to attack. I know the IP of this machine. It's one machine. It's on internet. Right. So
You have an extra 1 in there in the second 10.
Oh yeah, that's probably. Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Okay. So few things you will see is like, it is trying to do HTTPS, so nothing shows up. And then I'm gonna try HTTP, right? Okay, it's not showing up. So this is one of the things with attack box sometimes. Go ahead.
Now, this is what is exactly my problem is there. When I'm trying to running this side of machines of attack, it doesn't be work with me. That's why I'm emailing for you several times.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the way the video was explaining was all the time focused on the calling machine. So that seems to be pretty easy to him, but no, not for me.
Yeah, so yeah, this is the attack box can be finicky. Let's give it a minute here. That's weird. Okay.
But in the
Oh yeah,
meantime,
I know what's going on. I think go ahead. Someone was
sometimes
saying.
it was be work and sometimes it can be stopped. It's for me.
Yeah.
First day it was be working, and then second day when I need to finish my work is I'm never being able to open it.
Okay. Yeah. So the problem I know some students and like even I am right now running into is there is some firewall situation here. Let's see. So
What-
go ahead.
It looks like you're only allowed one session per day too.
Yeah, it's one session for an hour. That's completely fine. But the idea is not to kind of like solve the problem. But even if you spend that 1 hour, you want to learn something new. So that's the whole point. And I didn't want you guys to. I also think this is happening because of. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think proxy. Let me see if even if you can get to try hack me from here, because that's the first one. Okay, so yeah, as that comes up, let's try the terminal. And again, like lay of the land here, right? Like very basic stuff. So I open up the terminal on the attack box. So this is the machine kind of, this is equivalent to some people might be using Kali machines, or some people might just be VPNing from their own computer, what have you, right? Whatever your tool chain is, right? Whatever your favorite kill chain is, right? Like, and so for a lot of starter people, Kali Linux is a perfectly fine one, but for someone who is super new, this attack box is completely fine. So here, like, you will see, like, this is the machine you get. So as I think, yeah, that this is the problem with it. I think it's stuck. It's not being able to connect, but we'll get to that part in a minute. But what I want to show you on this box, right? Like, there is a whole bunch of stuff here. And this is sort of getting a little bit familiar with Linux, Ubuntu. This is like a half Kali machine. It doesn't have all the tools, right? So it has some of the tools like Nmap, right? And so for scanning, it has tool like Nmap. For frameworks, it has Metasploit. For wireless, it has air cracking. For password cracking, it has Hydra. It has John the Ripper. It has Hashcat. For for web cracking or for web pen testing, it has these tools: Burp, OWASP Zap, Nikto. For fuzzing, it has Derby, GoBuster, WFuzz, Arjun. So, kind of, this is even the first hour, if you spent, like, getting familiar with this machine, that's a good way. It has some programming tools like SQLite browser, Postman, and then it has a lot of these tools, which all of these are, like, coming up. And here you will see that it has word lists, right? And so it has internet through these guys, right? Yeah, I see. Yeah, I think that's basically what is happening. Okay, so let's see if I can ping my machine. So this machine from this box. So the way to kind of do that is the command called ping. So this is one command you should learn. Is it kind of tells you whether the other machine is up or not. So what all it does is it sends some bytes and comes back. So basically, the way this, I'll tell you for now, right now, right? There's something wrong with this attack box because it's not able to reach the machine I am attacking, right? So this is not going to work, I know, from start with, right? And that's again completely fine. So you can close, you can see, okay, no, I'm not able to reach the machine. Okay, that's fine. So what are tools which you will use in this one, right? You're using some brute forcing, you're using some hash cracking, you're using some service enumeration, things like that. So can I find those on there? And so let me show you where those tools are in this, and we'll come back to the part that the attack box is not working right now, right? And some of it might be just trying a few times, but and I think a lot of times it's about proxies where it is getting blocked. So from here, what I'm going to first show you is tools which are for the tasks, right? The tools which you can use, brute forcing. So there are few tools in here which helps you brute force. And so the tools are GoBuster and Dirbuster. So I'll open up this tool called Dirbuster. So what this tool does is it basically, it has its own list of words. What it tries to figure out is like, oh, is there like a combination of a directory which exists on this web server? It tries to figure out if there are words which commonly are available on a web server. So it'll try to figure out whether you have left any config files, any development files, anything like that on a machine, right? So you can start it this way, or you can use the terminal here and just type dirbuster, right? And so one thing you want to learn from command line tools is like, if I type it, it will tell me how to use it if I don't supply it anything. And if I need to know more, you can do, I don't know if man is going to work, but there is a command called as manual. So the manual for this is, that's another command you want to learn is called man. And sometimes you read it and you understand it a little bit. A lot of times you don't, and that's also completely fine. So that's how you go about, brute forcing. Other thing you will need for brute forcing is word list. So I'm gonna click on word list, and so it's just gonna open up this terminal with the word list. And where are these word lists on this machine? They are in this directory, user share word list, and you will see there is a bunch of directories here. So it has a directory called Derby. It has a directory called Dirbuster. It has a directory Python for pen testers, Seclist, Metasploit, RockU. So one I'm going to show you is RockU. And so the command line for looking at any file is either more or cat. I'm just going to do cat. So, so this is the third command you want to learn. So what it is, I say cat, and what it is giving is like this huge list of like, some words, right? So I'm going to say Control C is the other command you want to learn. So it stops this from going forever because it's a long file. And what this file has, these are passwords. These are passwords which were leaked from a breach. Someone has a question? Yeah, I think I'm gonna mute yourself if you're not talking. Let's make sure. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll do that. Okay, cool. All right. So, these are the passwords which were leaked from this social media site called RockU. Have you guys heard of this website? It was in early 2010s. And so RockU was like, like MySpace, Facebook, that sort of website. And there was a breach in that website. And then all the passwords were basically put on the internet. And so what you're doing is, what can you use this for, right? So you can only guess so many passwords for people, right? Like you can only say, what could John's password be? John's password might be John123, John 1, John 2024, like, some combinations which you would use as passwords or like simple passwords, you might think John is doing it, right? But what if you crowdsource that? And you were like, what passwords do people use normally? And then RockU is like one of the more comprehensive lists because it came from real users and hundreds and thousands of them. So now you have a sample of like what type of passwords did users usually use. And so you can use these passwords to try breaking into other people's machines. And so they are very good for brute forcing. Yeah.
I have a
So
question.
go ahead.
So, is this good? Are these lists good also for passwords that you shouldn't use? So if you're thinking of using a password, like you should run it by these lists to double check it's not on these lists.
Of course, of course.
Okay.
So now we are, this is the world in early 2010s, right? Like now we're in 2024, so we are a decade later after these things. So a lot of and you probably hear passwords being stolen from websites all the time nowadays, right? So this is just even not the tip of the icebergs, right? Like this is just a grain in the sand, if you will, of the desert here, because now there is like lists and lists of passwords out there, and so and there are like if you use like some websites like Have I Been Pawned, and some of these people, these are great actually websites. And so there is a website called as Have I Been Pawned, right? And basically it means like, hackers usually use the word pawned or owned, or like to kind of, have control of the machine. So what we are really trying to do here is we're trying to, pawn this machine, right? And so own this machine. We're going to try to be the super user on this machine. So how many people have your password? If I kind of, type in at Have I Been Pawned, what it is asking is give me email address and I'll tell you how many passwords I have it. So I'm just going to pick like john@gmail.com, like very generic one. So this is one website where, if someone asked earlier, right? Like, hey, is this the good list to see, not password to choose? Yes, but there is like this website which has like lists and lists like RockU, where you can just kind of put in your email address and see if any of your passwords are available in some of the breaches. And here I'll see that john@gmail.com was pawned, by in all these breaches. His password was actually shared. How many is this? Right? It's freaking long, right? And so a lot of browsers now also give you tool. If you use Gmail security, they'll also tell you, hey, don't use this password because it's already been like, found in some breaches. So, the thing about RockU is like this was one of the earliest good lists. And so that's why it's included in Kali Linux for like, starters. For starters, it's a great list. So that's like another tool, right? So that's a tool for brute forcing. But these word lists are also good tools for like, password cracking. So we talked about like, brute forcing using Dirbuster, brute forcing using a word list, and the word list would be like, from Dirbuster. So if I go to dir, this derby cd, and so cd is the another command line command you should look. You will see they have a lot of these lists, right? And so how do you know which list to use? You really don't. You have to guess. And so it's always very easy to start with the most common one, and especially like if you're doing something basic, you want to start with a small one. So let's say the small.txt, right? And so I'm going to use more this time, another command, and it's giving me all these like list of words. And so what are these words? Some says bot, some say bot, some say buttons, build, cache manager, so on and so forth. So these are common names of like directories which you can find on servers. And this is a small list of them, right? Go ahead, Anthony. You have a question? You can speak or type, whatever is comfortable.
I know dir is directory, and then what's dir b exactly?
The B is the name of the tool's first initial, Buster. So dir Buster is a brute forcing tool to guess directory names on servers.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
Also, I mean, I don't know what happened to me, but when I was in the website, try hack me, I was doing a couple of these penetration tests and all that stuff, and all of a sudden, like my video came up. I was like, "What is this?" So I saw myself on the screen, and I was like, "I got hacked." I don't know if it happened to anyone else. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, so you want to be careful. Like, hackers love doing that sort of stuff.
Yes, I have a question. When
Go
you
ahead.
come up with these passwords, I mean, like not you, but when a hacker sells these passwords, how do you know? how recent are these passwords? Because I don't see like special characters and things of that nature.
You know, when this, like if they're selling on the underground markets, you know, they tell you the passwords, which breach they're from, and from that, you know how recent they were. But like, you know, something like RockU, something which is like, you know, for ethical hacking, they are well known, right? Like here in this word list, you know, this RockU list, you know that it came from 2012, I think, something like that. So it's 12 years old. So you know, but there are a lot more recent lists, and like, you know, in this set list you will find like a lot of these, like, you know. And so people especially on the ethical side of the world, people collaborate to create these lists. And so this is a good, the sec list has like some of the recent ones. So you will see that, you know, there are 10 million passwords, and they might be like combination from different you know, hacks. So you will see all sorts of things. A lot of times, like, you know, how you probably have heard about like these credit card thieves, right? They sell credit card numbers to people. So it's very similar. You know, the password thieves are similar too. They're selling passwords. But like, you know, you will sometimes, like, you know, the credit card people will also tell you, well, you know, maybe out of the 100 credit cards I gave you, maybe 2 will work, right? So cool. All right,
Thank
so
you.
go ahead. Someone else?
Oh,
Okay.
just saying thank you.
Okay, so we talked about these tools, right? Brute forcing, hash cracking, passwords. So all these brute forcing directories, I showed you where the lists are. Passwords, I showed you where the lists are. So let's talk about tools which you use to, and we talked about Dirbuster. There is also another tool here called as GoBuster. Which helps you kind of guess directory names on servers. Dirbuster, GoBusters. Those are two. So other two password cracking tools I want to talk about is Hydra and John the Ripper. So I'm going to open up Hydra. And so this is Hydra. And so again, like, you know, you can just even in your terminal type Hydra and you will get it. But you know, there is, if you're new, sometimes it's easier to just go here and see, okay, there is Hydra, right? And this is exactly the same kind of things you will see on Kali Linux as well. So this is like a streamed down version of Kali Linux. Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Anthony, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry about that. So I downloaded Kali Linux on a virtual machine. Is there any way to basically get an upgrade or update it?
Yeah. Usually you wouldn't need to, but you just go into the terminal, something like that, and it has a command called as apt apt-get, and you can say upgrade like that. And sometimes you might want to run it as a super user, so you want to run it as sudo. But yeah, apt-get upgrade just in the virtual machine.
Okay.
So, you know, Hydra is a very interesting tool. So what this tool does is it basically tries to crack passwords, um, and or like tries to log into systems. So I'm just going to use from the example here, right? What it is doing is Hydra, and this gives you the example, right? Like, it says Hydra -L user, which is the name of the user, and then a password list. and then what server you're trying to log into. And the first is FTP and then an IP address, right? And so if I go up a little bit here, you will see this syntax of Hydra, right? Hydra is like Hydra L-L with the login name, dash P dash capital P with the file of the passwords to try, and then what you supply it is the service, server, and port. That right? So you can use Hydra to basically attack or try to guess passwords logging into some system. So you can do FTP, SSH, HTTP, things like that. But you know, a lot of times HTTP is just not going to work because there's a lot of defense mechanisms in there. So Hydra is a tool to actually try and brute force. Another tool which is to actually guess the original password from a hash is called John the Ripper. And so this is the tool I'm going to open up next. And so John the Ripper, you know, you will see like, oh, okay, I opened up John the Ripper. It doesn't give me that that much information. It's giving me an error, can't find John home. Okay, that's fine. So I am going to say man John. So again, like how do you, so it doesn't even have a manual entry. I'm going to try to see where, if there is John on this machine. Yeah, okay. So there is this, and then I'm gonna say, okay, there you go. Dash dash help is going to give me, again, these are the tricks you want to like learn over time. It's not going to come like, you know, sometimes one, like, you know, it's a trial and error mechanism a little bit, like, you know, man didn't give me help, question mark didn't give me, and then I'm just going to do John dash dash help, right? And so what this is saying, this is how you use John, right? And so John the Ripper, you know, it's, you can find more information on this website about it. What you do is you give it some options and you give it password files. And what it is going to try to do is, you know, passwords, the way when they're stored on the systems, just for security, they are not stored in clear. They are hashed and stored. So what John the Ripper as a tool does is given a hash of a password, given like this cryptographic, like we learned about cryptography last class, right? Given this password, which you just mungle it and like, you know, do all the transposing, all these crazy encryption schemes on it, like, can you guess the original password? So turns out in lot of cases you can. And so, you know, hackers wrote, or like this is tool for encryptions which are not very powerful. What you can do is you can actually guess the original text from the encrypted text. So that's what John does. It's again a brute forcing tool, and it helps to decrypt your encrypted information, if you will. And in this case, the information you are after or you're really trying to find is passwords. Cool. So that's John. And so let's talk about you know, the service enumeration. And we will in today's class we'll talk a little bit about Nmap. So there is, and this is how basically you will start. So in this case, there is a tool here called as Nmap. And so what Nmap does is Nmap helps you figure out, like, you know, on this IP address, on this machine, what services are running. And so we will do Nmap in a lot more detail today, but that's the tool which helps you do a service enumeration. Okay, Nmap. So we talked about, let me, like, again, like this is sort of your kill chain, right? This is a tools of your choice. These are hacking tools, if you will. These are tools to help you figure out, like, you know, how to get into a machine. So, but Nmap is really like just a utility. It's used in so many different contexts. What this utility lets you do is it lets you point at some machine, and what it is going to do is it's going to scan that machine and tell you what types of services are running on that machine on that particular IP address. And so that's what Nmap does. So you will find in the scanning tools, you will find Nmap here, okay? And it's also this is exactly same on Kali Linux as well. So the last one, let's talk about Linux enumeration. So Linux enumeration is so let's say, on servers and on personal computers, it's not very common these days, but like, sometimes on your school computer, for example, right, there is an administrator who creates accounts for you on your school computers, right? And so, but you can only do so much things on your school computer, or like if you are on a server as a user, you can do only so many things as a regular user. So but as an administrator, you can do a lot more things on a machine. So computers have these concepts of like type of a user, right? Some users have permission to like, install programs. Some users cannot install programs. All they can do is, use a browser on the machine, for example, right? So the way it's done on Linux is by, user roles. And it's done by, the user tools provided by the system. But there are like weaknesses in the Linux system by which what you can do is you can switch from a regular user to a super user. And so the tools which let you find these loopholes and let you become from a regular user to a super user are called as Linux enum or enumeration tools. So let's see if we can find any of these, right? And so here I'm going to go sys. So some of the tools, okay, fuzzing, not really. Let's see in other, right? Let's see if we can find any enumeration tools.
Sorry to interrupt you, instructor. You might want to add more time for the try hack me. It's 2 minutes expired.
Oh, that's fine. Like, because this attack box is not working, we'll try again in a different session. I'll let it terminate.
All right.
But I'll actually, yeah. Okay. Okay. So, see, I'm gonna close all of these guys. So there is a tool called as Linux enum, and it can do several things. So let me. Okay. Let me see if it's.
Leave him alone.
All right. Okay. Let's make sure we have. Okay. Okay. Just give me a second so I can bring up the tool here. Go ahead.
I have a random question. I was on the internet and I guess I was on YouTube and then all of a sudden it said something about Armitage. And then it was saying that it was part of Metasploit. What is that exactly?
We'll cover Metasploit today, so we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So it's kind of a little bit weird. I, for some reason here, thought there was enum for Linux, like in the Okay, there's hashcat. Okay, it's weird. System, do you see anything? Okay. Programming, no. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right. Okay. So I guess from this easy menu there it's not there, but on this attack box there is another tool which you just, if you open up the terminal and you type, it's called enum for Linux. And so what that does is it helps you enumerate a few things from a Linux system. And these tools, so there is two tools which you want to know about. One's called enum for Linux and one called as linpiece. So linpiece is not installed on this machine, and I'll show you, how you can install it too. But it's nothing but a script. But what it is, all it is trying to do is trying to get like a regular user to go find ways for him to become a super user, right? Or try to figure out things on the computer. What enum for Linux does is, given a Linux machine, if you know this machine is Linux, right? And so I'm just going to run it, right? Enum for Linux. So if I run it, what it's spitting out at me is its commands, right? Like, oh, what is this machine letting me do? Or sorry, what this tool can do, right? It's saying, it's a script which can get you a user list. It can get a machine list. So you can add options like, hey, here's a password policy list, or it is going to help you figure out from a particular machine, which is if it's a Samba server. So if it has got like SMB on it. So what does all of that mean? Like SMB and Samba and things like that. So what it means is like this Linux computer has like has these shares or has these files on it which can be used from a Windows computer. So Samba is a protocol for doing that. So when you share information from your Linux computer to Unix, and you typically want to do it as a server, right? If you are a server running in a company or in a university or something like that, the Samba protocol allows you to share the files on that server with with Windows users, right? And so that's really that's something you kind of are aware of. And so what enum for Linux is going to help you do is you can point it to a Linux machine, and it's going to try to find all the weaknesses in it. And one of the weaknesses it will find is oh, this Linux machine runs a Samba protocol, and it can also sometimes go in and say, for all these Samba shares, these are the users who have access to it. And so why is that information important? Because then that these are the usernames on the system. Like so then like on these machines there are these 2 or 3 usernames. And then if you can kind of somehow poke into their information, then you might be able to find like, special directories which are named after them. You can find maybe their password files. You can find some mistake which they might have done, which will help you get into the machine. So enumeration, which is, service enumeration or Linux enumeration, just gives you additional information to attack, right? So remember we talked about the steps of pen testing, right? Like, so the first step of pen testing is you're enumerating, right? And so you can enumerate by enumerating, or like by doing recon, you're reconning or reconnaissance. What you're trying to do is you're trying to find more information. So tools like enum for Linux will help you do that. And it's specifically useful in the case of, in this exercise, it will help you get on the Samba share. So all these tools I just talked about, you probably have to use in this exercise, but I'm kind of giving you a little bit of genesis of these tools and why they are useful and how you get to it on this. So the last tool which you will need for this exercise, which is not on this machine, but again, it's also not on Kali Linux, and you would probably install it, is called linpiece. And so this one, I'm going to see if I can, let me find, just 1 second. So I'm going to go in here and type this thing called as len keys, and it's not going to work on this machine because I think there is some problem with internet on this machine. So this is sort of the thing, and it's telling me, oh, you know how to install it, and it's giving me this command line, right, to install it. So I can just copy this and go to this machine. Let's see if it even works. Okay. Yeah, I think this machine just is somehow blocked. Okay. So, I think this attack box, the reason it's failing is because it just like its network connectivity is toast on this attack box. And I don't know why. Okay. So if I were to run this, on any other machine or any other box, it will install this script called as linpiece, and then you can just run it. And if you have, maybe I'll show you on my Kali Linux box. So how you do it? Let's say you open new this thing. I'm just going to say, do that, right? It's weird why it's doing that. Okay. There's a copy paste thing. So there you go. So it's basically running that command right away. So it's showing this script should be used for authorized pen testing, educational purposes only, etc., 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 right? And it's running on this machine. I'm not even downloading, right? So I'm just gonna kill it. But I can download it as like this, right? And so on this current machine, I download it. Just 1 second. Oh, I did the same mistake. Okay, there you go. So I'm gonna just download it as keys.shell as the thing. Okay, so if I see here, now there is a thing called as linpiece shell, right? And so I'm going to say, so if I were to run it locally, and this is the extra command I have to run, it's called chmod plus x. And so what it is allowing me to do is to run this this file as a script. And so this is one other command line thing you should learn is called chmod, which changes the permissions of that file. But having said that, the first one, this one, you don't even have to do that, right? This when you run it as a shell. But like if you want to have it stored on my machine and always being able to use it, so I'm going to kind of run it like this. Okay, so I'm going to say dot linpiece, and then it's going to run the whole thing, right? And so what this is not on the machine, but you can run it this way. You don't even, I think this is a cool way that you don't even have to install it. Like you can just run it like this. Okay. So this is another tool you can use to, or this is the other tool you would need to do that exercise. So I have covered all the tools you need actually to finish this exercise. And I kind of gave you a little bit of idea on what these tools are going to do. So I am going to just walk through the exercise with you guys for next 5 minutes and kind of give you a little bit of like, how would you go about doing it, right? And we talked about these tools. So, the main goal here is to learn as much as possible. Again, same thing as I said, right? Like you can use OpenVPN, etc. So find the services exposed on by this machine. Just so, can someone tell me what tool you will use to do that?
Nmap.
Nmap, yeah.
Nmap, yeah.
Right? And that's sort of the tool you would do that. And again, like if you are stuck here, it'll give you a hint here, use Nmap, right? And so the way you would go here is you would go here and you can use Nmap like that. But like now, how are you going to use the Nmap, right? And so you kind of figure that out, right? So what is the name of hidden directory on the web server? What tool would you use to do that?
Buster.
That's right. So you can, for doing that, the tool you would use is Dirbuster, this tool, or you can also use GoBuster. Again, like it's like one of those, like, what you prefer. Okay. So once you do that, user brute forcing, find the username and password. Okay. So this is so user brute friendly to find a username. What is the username? What tool would you run to try to do that?
Enum for Linux.
That's right. And so the way you would, like, it's not accessible from here. You would kind of go and you would type in enum for Linux. So the reason you are able to use enum for Linux is because this particular machine is a SMB machine. And the way you actually figured that out was when you ran Nmap on it, you saw that it had SMB on it, right? Cool. So you find the username through enum for Linux. Now, how do you find the password?
Hydra.
That's right. So you use Hydra to, once you find the username, then you use Hydra. And then what protocol are you going to use for this? FTP,
SSH.
SSH. And how do you know there is SSH on that machine? From Nmap.
Nmap, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now you know username, password of one person. What service do you use to access the server? Yeah, we talked about it, right? Enumerate the machine to find vectors for privilege escalation. And so, what would you use to find vectors for privilege escalation in this case?
LinPeas.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the last tool I showed you, which is like, you can just run this sort of stuff. And so what is the name of the other user you find? Because when you kind of do that, you find, oh, there is another user whose name is XYZ. So I'm not going to say the name, right? So you find this other user, and then how do you find the final password? What password cracking tool did you use?
John the Ripper.
Right? Both John the Ripper and Hydra, or right? You could use either also. So, again, like if you actually finished all of that, that's amazing. Like, you get bonus points, but like the idea is for you to, everything you did to actually own this box was coming from the fact that you actually used, Nmap and you first thing is what is this machine running, right? So I'm going to terminate that machine, but that's sort of like the the overview of this and all the tools involved. We will actually do this. I will show you how to do it with attack box. I have to yeah, so this attack box, so you know, I hear you that the attack box can be a little bit finicky, like you know, it wasn't connecting to the machine. So if it happens, the best thing to do is try again. So you know, we'll try again towards, like you know, the end of the class is as well from the attack box. But everything you needed to do for this exercise is in the attack box. If you wanted to kind of do it from Kali Linux, it's very similar. Like, you know, I'll just show you quickly on Kali Linux. This is my Kali Linux box, right? And so on Kali Linux, it is going to look a little bit more fancier, but it has a search box here. So all the tools are here. So what was the first tool we talked about? Nmap, right? What was the next tool we talked about? Dirbuster or GoBuster, right? There was the other tool we talked about was enum for Linux, right? It shows up on Kali Linux like that. What is the other tool we talked about? John the Ripper. It shows like John, right? Hashcat, sorry, Hydra. And it also has, the good part is like it also has a graphical interface for Hydra here, but it's not very useful, right? Like, you know, it's kind of like, you know, it's pretty bare bones. So all the same tools are on Kali Linux. They are included in it, right? And you can kind of, the other good, and I'll kind of introduce a Kali Linux a little bit this way, since today we are just talking about tools, right? The way Kali Linux gives you screen, and especially like, you know, you can install a full install or like just the basic one, which I have right now here. You have tool for information gathering, right? And so it has tools, all these tools you can use to do information gathering. And today we're going to talk about Nmap a little bit more detail. You will see tools for vulnerability analysis, tools for web application analysis. Today we're going to talk about SQL map a little bit. So, you know, tools for password attacks. And so these password attacks, you know, in the exercise you talked about like Hydra and John and so on and so forth, right? We're not going to do any wireless attacks, no reverse engineering. And then we're going to do about exploiting tools. And so the one we'll talk today about is Metasploit. It is in your Kali Linux. And then, you know, for sniffing, you probably learned a lot. You will learn in other classes Wireshark, how you use Wireshark. And then post exploitation, like, you know, what do you do with things after exploit? Again, like you see all these are like phases like of like pen testing, right? And so the way Kali Linux is trying to organize some of the tools is by like type of pen test or the phases of pen testing. You also have some forensic tools. Autopsy is we talked about a little bit. And you have a forensics class which will talk about autopsy. In this class, we will talk about some social engineering tools, and you wanna get familiar with Multigo, you know, and then other social engineering kits. But you know, before you jump into the soup of the tools, right? You always want to kind of process in your head, like, why am I doing this? Like, what is actually happening? And especially as a new person, you should question everything, like why I'm doing it and why. And that will help you get like better, because a lot of times, you know, past like in a year or two, half of these tools might even become stale or like not applicable at all. Then that means everything you learned about, like, you know, using that tool is lost. It's useless, right? So you want to learn about the technique first, then the tool, right? So that's the other criteria when you are learning the tricks is like the technique should be first, the tool second, because tools are going to go out of fashion. Tools are going to go stale. You know, they might not work at all. things like that. And that's very much like, you know, the nature of pen testing. Like sometimes things work, sometimes they don't. It's not guaranteed that it's going to work all the time, right? And so it's part of the process. Cool. All right, we covered the same stuff in Kali Linux. So that was the lab, but today we are going to, we're going to take a break shortly here. And I'm gonna just cover a few things here. Lab 3 we'll talk about it end of the class as well. Lab 3 will be due not December 1st. I need to update the slides, but before the next class. And then quiz 2, which is based on content of the last class, will be open till Sunday. Okay. We reviewed lab 2, and then when we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit detail about pen testing tools, and we'll go through some of the tools I talked about, like Nmap, Metasploit, Nessus, and SQL Map. And these I'll talk about like a little bit more in detail and show you them in work. And the slides will cover them. And the lab for this week will be based on these tools. It's fairly straightforward. The lab's pretty easy actually. So don't worry about it. But the lab which you guys did last time, you should try again. Try again. Even if you submitted your homework, it's okay, because you're gonna learn a lot from that lab. It's meant to serve as a booster for you to try and learn more. It's not meant to be getting the whole thing right. I don't expect anyone to actually solve the whole lab. If you did, that's great. Sweet. So we'll take a break, and I think what I want to today is add. I'm gonna add it to the slides here. What we're gonna add is we're gonna maybe do threat modeling. When we come back from the break, we'll do threat modeling first, and then we'll also do intrusion or incident management exercise. Then we will cover the tools, and then towards the end we might have I'll check in the break if our guest is coming. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so that's all we'll cover today. We'll do threat modeling, incident management for for 45 minutes or so, and then the tools will cover for 30 minutes or so, and hopefully we'll have time for guests for 15 minutes or so. Cool. All right. Any questions before we jump into a 10-minute break?
Yeah, do we have access to the slides, or can you like just share with us?
Yeah, I'll post it into the.
Thank you.
And again, like at end of the class, you will have links to the slide, the recording. But for now, I will put the slides in the Zoom. Just give me a second. Okay, you should have it in the Zoom messages. Okay. Okay, awesome. So we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back. I'm gonna pause the recording. Okay. So last class we talked a little bit about like pen testing. We did like a pen testing tools earlier. We talked about pen testing. So pen test is all about like attack, right? Like it's about trying to get into systems. So now let's talk about a little bit about defense side of things, right? Like if you are defending from all the attackers, what would you do? So the technique at the core level, most software teams and systems team do is called threat modeling. What threat modeling is basically you're kind of assessing security of your system, like how an adversary would look at it, and then designing defenses for it. Okay. The goals of threat modeling are around you know basically securing your premises. So if you were attacked, what is your first line of defense? What's your second line of defense? What's your third line of defense? That sort of stuff. And then in the process of threat modeling, you build these moats, you build these defenses, but you also verify that whether your defenses work or not work. And you want to do it in a way that that's scalable in your organization. You don't want different teams doing different types of defense mechanisms, and because all of them need to kind of work in a unison, right? Like so one app team kind of has this defense in place and other app team has another defense, only when it makes sense. So you want to kind of plan that a little bit. And then, as you kind of build and finish your system with threat modeling, what you want to kind of think of it is, have you actually tested the security of your system? So it's an end-to-end design perspective of how are you going to defend. So typically the way you would kind of go is you would understand how the adversary is going to attack it. You would characterize their attacks, what are most probable attacks they're going to do. And then you're going to build defenses based on the types of threats you're going to get. There are some types of threats you might not have defenses for at all because it's too expensive to build a defense for that, right? Cool. So let's talk about how are you gonna figure out who your enemy is. So if you were a utility company's website, let's say if you were the PG&E's local website and computer system, who are your enemies?
Everyone at that point.
Right? And how are we talked about types of attackers in the first class, right? Like types of these script kiddies and nation state actors and funded actors and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so if you were PG&E, what are your system assets?
Substations, all the PLCs they have over there. I did a lot of stuff there.
Right. So you wanna think of all of your assets, right? Like it's it might be your base stations, it might be your billing system, it might be your employee information, it might be all the data assets which you touch on, right? So if you are the website, then are there any entry points from the website into, let's say, base stations or things like that? Is there an entry point possible?
Let's hope not.
Right. So you want to think about it, right? Okay, what are what all places people are going to visit my website and what are entry points? And then you want to create a trust level, right? Like would a base station system, let's say the base station has a computer controlling it, would it trust the computer which runs the website? And they are all PG&E's assets. should the base station computer trust the computer which runs the website,
No.
right? So so if you were to think of like, the trust boundaries, then they should have a trust boundary, right? So you want to think of those aspects, right? Like, and as a defender, so you kind of make a list of your assets, right? And then what you kind of do is you analyze the entry points on of your websites, like um, so let's talk about the scenario, what are possible misuse scenarios if you are defending PG&E's website. uh, what are possible misuse scenarios?
Well, like, not so much misuse, but like, what about, the wrong type of data entry?
Right, yes, so someone's gonna someone's gonna maybe put in the wrong address or something like that, or someone might put in a fake address, let's say. Right,
Someone might put in wrong information, bad information.
right. What else?
Someone might try to hack your database to get information about your customers, like their names, addresses, their payment information.
Right, like that yes, someone might just want the list of all the people living in a particular area and their sensitive information, and you might even have their credit cards on file, right?
A disgruntled employee.
Yeah, a disgruntled PG&E employee might just get all the credit card numbers and sell them on black web or something like that, right?
Or how about denial of service attack so nobody can use the website?
Right. Yeah, so people are just not able to pay PG&E,
Yes.
right? So those are all great, right? Like, so you want to think of all the attacks possible, and then you want to model the system. And so to the very base level, you want to kind of figure out, oh, the PG&E website is going to have a web server, it's going to have a database, and then it's going to have a billing system interface, right? So you want to draw a system diagram of like how your system works, right? And then we'll talk about, let's take someone wants to pick an example of like, let's say Craig's your example, like someone's going to take all the list of all the users, and then someone had another example, like someone's going to try to DDoS you, right? Like that was Andrew, right? Let's say. So you have all these threats. So you have two attacks, right? And so how would you prioritize the attack? Let's say you know uh, uh, the risk of someone stealing everyone's names and addresses from your database versus someone just making your website unusable for anyone. Now, how are you going to evaluate this threat, right? Which threat to defend against first, right? So the way you want to think of these threats, and these are just the two examples, right? Your threats will be a very long list, and it's also, you're not going to be a complete list of threats because it is going to be a cat and mouse game in a way, like, you will come up with a list of threats and someone creative might come up with one more list of threats, right? Someone might be like, what about all these our employees who just put in these yellow stickies on their computer, and someone might just walk in cleaning the PG&E office, and then they take a photo of all these yellow stickies, and now they have username passwords of all my employees, right? And that's a very likely thing, right? And so now how are you going to defend against that? It's a or someone might just be like writing the username passwords on a paper, and they just dump it into the bin next to their table, and someone is just dumpster diving and finds like a username password of a PG&E employee, right? So, there will always be a lot more threats. There will always be an infinite amount of attack vectors, right? But you want to categorize them. So the way you want to kind of do it is like, this acronym, and this is something you want to like learn and kind of internalize. It's called DREAD. So what does DREAD stand for? So, how bad an attack would be, damage. What does R stand for? Reproducibility. How easy it is to reproduce the attack. What's the third one? E, exploitability. How much work it is to launch that attack, right? Affected users. How many people will be impacted by it, right? And then the last is discoverability. How easy it is to discover the threat. So now let's take an example, like let's take those two scenarios and let's just work through this, right? Like which one would you rate higher or lower, right? So the first is what Craig said, like, hey, someone's going to just steal all the user information from our database. And then a second one is what Andrew is saying, someone might just make our web server non-functional and no one can like access it anymore, right? They DDoS it. So those are our two attacks. So let's say which one has higher damage? The Craig's attack or Andrew's attack?
That's a real big matter of like perspective, right? Who's making that decision? Because user data is huge, but then our website's down. So we're losing money. So maybe the question is, are we going to lose more money with the website down or lose more money with the lawsuit for the user data going out?
Right. So the way you are trying to assess the damage is dollar amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. The other way you are trying to assess the damage is by reputation, right? And then, other way you're trying to assess the damage is like, is this like any real harm caused? Is like someone's electricity or like any PG&E services like actually going to go down, right? So you can kind of do the exercise and you can put a number on it, right? And so you walk through like the list of users and you walk through the website, and let's say the website was down for 2 days. How much is the dollar amount? And versus, so very many times there is a ballpark number on what it costs per account when the data is like stolen. So, so you can kind of say, if our data for 100 users was stolen and we kind of ballpark like the cost of lawsuit, cost of like damage control, cost of fixing it for the user, and all of that for each account is, let's say, $30. Then my damage for 100 users is $33,000, right? Something like that. Like you can do an exercise like that and you can come up with a number, right? So that's one way. But if you were just to estimate, like, if I said to you, like, Craig had, like, there are 100,000 users whose data was lost and our website was down for like 2 days, whose damage is more?
Well,
So you would,
if nobody uses the website that often, I think the
Right.
100,000 users is more.
right? Exactly. So you can kind of come up with like an idea. And so in the context of that, when you're building it, you can kind of say, oh, it's more important to protect our database, like in that sense. We might be okay because, for billing, they anyways pay every 30 days. And, it's okay if we get our money, 7 days late or something like that, right? So you do that. So how about reproducibility? How easy it is to reproduce the attack? So is it easy to DDoS or is it easy to steal information from database?
He does.
That's right. So you would then go, okay, so what does that mean? What the information that gives you? If it's easy to do it, that means a lot of people are capable of doing it, right? So you would think of DDoS a little bit, oh man, like, I don't know, like it's so easy, even the script kiddies can do it, right? How about exploitability? How much work it is to launch an attack? Is it easy to DDoS or is it, how much work it is to launch stealing data?
I think it's harder to steal data. You have to know a lot more access to the database, and I'm
Right.
sure they have layers of
Right. So it's easier to do a DDoS attack, right?
yes.
How about affected users? So, maybe let's say of our million users, 100,000 users' data was lost, and when we kind of DDoSed and put the whole website down, maybe all the users who use the website had affected. So which one would probably you would put higher? DDoS or data loss?
What was the question? I'm sorry.
In terms of affected users, who has a higher number of affected users, DDoS or data loss?
It's like a data loss.
Yeah, probably data loss. But if it's like around around the time people are supposed to pay and everybody's paying at the same time, maybe DDoS.
Okay, so you kind of figure out like, oh, this might be equal, let's say, or it might be one is more than other, right? Like, let's talk about discoverability. How easy it is to discover a threat? Like, how is it easy to know, like, oh, our data was stolen versus, oh, our website was down?
I would say DDoS because I guess people would call in immediately saying, "Hey, I can't get onto the website to pay."
That's
As
right.
opposed, yeah,
Right?
as a
Yeah.
yeah.
So, now you just took these seemingly very two different type of threats and you kind of thought a little bit about them on the dread criteria, right? And so now overall, if you were to give a score between 1 to 10 for each of these, dread categories, and I'm just ballparking this here, right? So, and if you were to kind of ascertain a score, what might be a dread score for DDoS and what might be a dread score for data loss, which might be higher?
Let's see, like a data loss.
Anyone else? So you can kind of say which one might be higher and why. How about that? Let's have that discussion.
Sounds like it could be a 50-50 loss.
Okay, anyone else?
But if this is a financial institution, then that's different than a library. So it's hard.
It's PG&E. It's PG&E, right?
Oh, it's PG&E. Okay.
So in case of PG&E, which of the threats might be higher here, right? So I'll just walk through what we had the conversation, right? We had a conversation that, oh, it's easier for reproducing a DDoS attack because anyone can do it. It's easier to exploit a DDoS attack because it's very easy for like a lot of people to do it. It's easy to discover a DDoS attack, because you will know right away. And then there might be more damage because of data loss. There might be more or equal number of users affected by a data loss, right? So you kind of give numbers to these things and you kind of decide. Let's say I'm just gonna, again, like this depends on the scenario, but that's kind of what you kind of go through. I might say, you know what, my my DDoS attack comes higher, so I need to now first think about, how do I secure my website from a DDoS attack, right? Before I think about data loss, right? And so that's the intent of, like, going through this exercise and scoring it, because there might be a threat, like, there might be a threat that someone's going to be, stealing data, but it's really hard for them to do it. Then you are just like, oh, it's there, but it's very unlikely that someone's going to have the technical skills to steal the data. So you're like, let me worry about it a little later. Now, let me think about like someone who is just like, easily able to do a DDoS, right? So that's the intent of doing it. And the way you kind of see that in real life sometimes, and so this is what you kind of quantify the threat. You will see CVE. So I'm going to pull up here CVE database. Sorry, where is it? Okay. So this is the MITRE Corporation, which there's also their CVE. There is a CVE.org, which is a publicly disclosed security vulnerabilities. And I'll just pull one up to kind of give you an idea of, like, when you all these dread criterias, what they sort of mean, right? Like, let's take something, it's easier. Okay, so these are very new CVEs. So this is a CVE 2024. It's a vulnerability, right? And so, the two things we talked about was the data loss, how we had it is a vulnerability. And then, the DDoS attack is a vulnerability on the website, right? So let me pull up, okay. I'm going to pull up this number. So every CE has a kind of number, and okay, there you go. Okay. So the NIST has details of the CVE, and what they do it is, they give it a number. It's funny. Unfortunately, I pulled one up which is not scored yet. So I am going to pull one up which has a score. So I'm going to say, okay, let's see. I'm just randomly picking one up, right? So this is a CVE, which is like a threat, and this threat has a score of 9.8. The NIST score of 9.8 and a base score of 10. So it's like this is a scale of 10. So that means this is like really serious, right? And the dread criteria are a little bit different here. The dread's easier to understand. The way the CVS scores is a little bit more different, but in the contrary, you can kind of see. So this is sort of like, a numbering system used by the industry. So you just want to be familiar with the threat numbering. So if something is 9.8 and your system had a vulnerability like this, what does it say?
Better fix it ASAP.
Right? And so this is the idea and intent of, like, because there is threats all the time. We live in a risky world, but we need to be able to prioritize, right? And so the idea of threat modeling, the idea of, like, prioritizing, the idea of, like, fine-tuning threats is around, like, hey, what do I do right now? Like, what do I have my team focus on, right? Or, like, in next 2 weeks or in next 3 months, right? And so this, this is sort of like the systems in place. So you want to be familiar with that. And so threat modeling helps you kind of look at that. I'm going to give you two links, and there is a Microsoft SDL page, which is pretty good, and we'll talk about it, about threat modeling. And they also have some tools here. So if you kind of see, it's a great tool. It's helps you kind of create that, system diagram and boundary and identify threats. And so you can download the threat modeling tool, and it's a Windows only tool, and you can kind of look at it. But there are also a lot of other open source tools. It kind of talks about like the concept we cover: identifying threats, mitigating threat, validating threat, things like that. So I encourage you guys to take a look at the threat modeling tool in your professional life. If you are on the defense side, very likely you're going to do a threat model, right? And very likely you're going to kind of talk about these. And then, there is another open source one, and this is a good link from OWASP. So OWASP, how many of you guys have heard of OWASP? So this is a very important organization you want to be aware of in terms of any web application threats. So the threats we talked about in the web application, those types of threats are listed, and that type of like a threat directory is made by this open organization called OWASP, and it's particularly for web applications. And now they do a lot more, but web applications is the main one. And so they are most well known for what's called OWASP Top 10. So if you and you will come across it in anything. If you do any web application pen testing, you will see this top 10 web application security risks. Right. And so every few years, they publish a list of like, what are the top 10 threats we have seen in web applications? And so in 2021, they saw these threats. In 2017, they thought these, and they kind of categorize them. Okay. And when you are building a web application, your threat modeling bank or your threat modeling concept will be against these threats, usually. So if you were building the web app for PG&E, you're going to see, oh, how likely are we, how secure is our broken access control thing? Do we have access control right? Did we test it? Are we sure like we only let the users who we say we let in? Like, are their passwords secure? Is there multi-factor authentication? Are the admin passwords, do they have MFA on them? Things like that. So you would go through all these threats. So this is a threat library. And in your threat model, you will kind of, keep those in mind. We'll talk about this a little bit more in detail in next class, and like how we are doing a little bit of group discussion today on incident handling. We'll do the same thing for threat modeling in OWASP context next week or the week after next. Okay, so OWASP is an organization which does that, and they have a pretty good guide on threat modeling lifecycle, and you can kind of, that would be, if you want to learn more, that's another link I would recommend. Let's talk maybe a bit of a threat, and then I'm going to switch into our group discussion today. So the threat I want to talk about is Equifax data breach. Okay, in 2017, Equifax had hundreds of millions of records stolen. The company was initially hacked via a consumer complaint web portal, with the attackers using a widely known vulnerability that should have been patched. But due to failures in Equifax internal process, was not patched. And the attackers were able to move from web portal into other servers because the systems weren't adequately segmented from one another, and they were able to find username, passwords stored in plain text, and then allowed them to access still further systems. the attackers pulled data out of the network in encrypted form, undetected for months because Equifax had crucially failed to renew an encryption certificate on one of their internal security tools. Equifax did not publish the breach until a month later after they discovered it had happened. Stock sales by top executives around this time gave rise to accusations of insider trading. Okay, so this is a little bit of a case study. We're going to talk about this after. What I want you to kind of keep in mind is this context, right? What happened? It was initially hacked because of a known vulnerability, right? And the reason people were able to hack because they didn't patch their servers, and from the server from the web server, the hackers were able to get to other servers, and then they found username and passwords which were stored in plain text, right? And then the attackers were also able to get more information because their SSL certificate was not up to date, right? So keep all of these in mind. And I want you, when we come back, right? I want to have this case study, and we'll come back as in like we'll do in context of incident response from the last time, and kind of keep this threat in mind. I want you guys to like discuss like, oh, if I were the defense team of Equifax, what would I do, right? And so let's I want to do it in context of this game, which I talked about last class. It's called Backdoors and Breaches, and I'll do a little bit of the game with you guys right now, and I'll show you how to play it. There you go. And all right, so I'm gonna pull up the core game. It is a exercise. Okay. Okay. So I gave you and I'm going to talk about this, right? Like, so I'm going to say, Equifax had a breach. I know that one of the servers was not patched, and someone posted a list of a whole bunch of username and passwords from Equifax onto the dark web, and now you are the incident response team for it. So what are you going to do? So the way this game works, and this is very similar to how we talked about what happens in case of an incident, is there is an initial compromise. The initial compromise, then there is a pivot and escalate, right? Where someone took an initial compromise and they were able to escalate it, like, get more information because of a small breach. And then using that escalation, they were able to exfiltrate data, right? And then they were able to put something in there which stayed there for a long time, which called persistence. So this is sort of life cycle of a hack, right? You not only hack one time, but very many times the most sophisticated hacker hack in a way that they put in a bug so that they can come back anytime they want. A lot of hacks have been there for like 2-3 years before anyone discovered them, right? And so this 2-3 year times of the hack being there is called persistent. So these are like these 4 kind of stages of the hack. And so you are at the first stage. You just kind of heard of this initial compromise about Equifax, right? And you are the incident response team for Equifax. what are you going to do? So the way this game works is you have these options of what procedures you can use. So you can do server analysis, you can do endpoint analysis, you can do SIM analysis, you can do memory analysis as the procedures you have established. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have these other procedures which you might do just one-offs. And you're going to, as a team, you're going to decide which procedure you're going to do first, knowing that, oh, your web server was hacked and some password showed up on internet, right?
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You explained the C2 and exfil like one more time, everyone.
Yeah, C2 stands for command and control, two C's, C and
Okay.
C.
Okay.
And exfiltration stands for you got like a whole long list of passwords and you took data out of data loss. Like in case of let's say the example Craig gave, right? Like, oh, someone got into PG&E's database and took all the names of the subscribers and their addresses, for example, right? That's exfiltration of the data. Does that help? Cool.
Yes, it did. It helped a lot. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So yeah, the way the game would work, and I would encourage you guys to just maybe off the class, because it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to finish one game to do it. So let's do maybe one round, and I'll show you how it works, like before we in terms of in terms of the game mechanics. But let's say you found out the web server was breached. What would you do? So all 22 of you work for Equifax security team. What do you decide to do the next? Of all these blue cards up there, what card would you pick? I will maybe take 2 or 3 people to
Isolation.
okay.
I would do server analysis.
Let's take one at a time. So who said isolation?
Graham.
Grab. Okay. Why would you do isolation, Graham?
Well, to prevent further, if you can isolate what they have access to, that kind of stops them in their tracks for the problem getting any worse.
Okay, great. Okay, that's great. So we have isolation as one. Okay, I'm just going to put these for now. These tokens have a different meaning, but yeah. So someone else.
I would say server analysis.
All right. Why?
Well, I know Graham was saying isolation, but I think before we could do isolation, we have to find out what happened first and where it happened. And once we get that information, then we could isolate. But I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. There's no right or wrong answer. That's fair. Okay, let's take one more. Who is the next person who wants to? What would you do?
Security.
This is that's John, right? Okay.
Yes.
So why?
Well, like basically you want to see, like what exactly got attacked. As far as is it your particular server or is it a list of servers that got attacked? So basically you just want to be able to isolate to see, like which endpoint was attacked or which devices or device.
So typically, and I'll kind of say, I won't like put this into play. It's endpoint analysis is usually associated with your endpoint devices. So it's in this case, your web server was compromised. It's not and by endpoint devices, you mean like, it's like, your like employees' computers. Like, if let's say one employee was hacked and then someone kind of got their username password and then used that, then you would want to go and look at that employee's computer, right? And that's an endpoint. If an employee's phone was hacked and someone got the company's password from it, then you would want to analyze the phone. And so typically that's sort of the endpoint. So I'm not going to put this into play because in this
Okay.
case, it's a server. We're not going to do an endpoint.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
What about the security information?
Yeah, that's great. SIM analysis. So you're gonna go to your security log and try to see, oh, let me look at like what happened last 24 hours, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. You wanna say why?
Because the security information, as I know, is the issue of management. And also that is like the main problem, because I know that is from the events of security information, there is a problem over there.
Okay, awesome.
I would say that
So
this is an incident management. So probably the log will tell us what incident took place if there's a
right?
breach.
Yeah, awesome. So no, so it's 22 of you. I got 3 of you to kind of come up with 3 possible next steps, right? So now of all of you guys, like let's it's gonna, you probably, you know, in a real life situation, you would be sitting in a room in like a lot of stress and like everyone yelling at each other and deciding what to do, right? So, but let's say if you were to take a vote, right? What are you gonna do? 1, 2, or 3? Let's just type into chat like let's just use 1, 2, or 3. So it's easier for me to eyeball which one gets like more votes. Come on. Get your votes in.
Will
Okay,
two-
so
will two
I'm
be the right answer
yeah.
since the first
So
one.
yeah, just eyeballing things. What do you guys think? 2 gets the most number of votes. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you decide is you guys are going to do server analysis. Okay. And you know, you all decide to do server analysis. Now, server analysis can work or cannot work. And this is what real life, you know, incident management is, right? Because you try to do something, it might or might not work. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll a dice and see if it works. So anything more than 10, you know, gives you would so the dice, I rolled a dice and it says failure. So what basically happened is, you know, your server analysis did not work. So now you have to decide what you're going to do next, right? But for the game, for the purpose of this game, I'm just gonna roll one more time. Let's say I got success, right? Server analysis did work, right? And so now I got the server analysis and I figured out, oh shit, like what happened? So then when you get success, you flip the card and you're like, oh, you know, it was a phishing attack in this case. But in Equifax case, I'm gonna say like, oh, you know, the web server was compromised. In that case, now you know that your server analysis work and like ignore this card for a minute and say like, you know, you knew that, you know, your web server was compromised and someone got to your web call. In this case, it's saying, you know, there was a phishing attack. So logically, when you know your web server was compromised, what you would then do next is you would basically isolate that server, or you would do one of these, right? And so if the last turn you did server analysis, I would put a 1 on it, and so you don't get to do that analysis again. And so now you go to the next turn, and so you keep doing this until you can reveal all these cards. And so what this basically you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out whether you can, in incident management, what would have been the right thing to do in Equifax case. As soon as the incident team knew, is they do server analysis or like some kind of analysis, and they're like, oh, you know, our web server was compromised. The first thing then they should do is they should isolate it so that it doesn't go to persistent. Like, because then, you know, if they were able to do it in first 5 minutes of the attack, then, you know, the attackers wouldn't have been able to go to another system in their server setup, right? And they would have stopped them, right? So as a defending team, it's a race to time, right? For you, because if you, the more time you let them be in your system, the deeper they're going to get, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So-
makes
that.
So you want to, so this is sort of the game which kind of helps. So incident management is not only like, you know, about like, you know, finding out what happened, but also not letting them go to persistent, right? You just not only you stop them, and then you figure out if they've planted any bug and kind of kick them out completely. That's what incident management is, right? You not only like write a report and tell people, but you want to make sure you actively kick them out. Does that make sense? Cool. So as the game progresses, you kind of do this activity, like, you know, more. There's no right or wrong answer to this game. It's a great discussion, and I highly encourage you to try this game because, you know, you will learn so much about these techniques and tools which you otherwise will take you like years to learn on experience and learning, because here the cards are very good. You can kind of see, you know, what tools you will use to do it. Like, you know, have the tools, even I don't know, right? And so here they say, oh, you know, the deep blue CLI. So then you go on internet and look up what's deep blue CLI, what SAS analysis cheat sheets. So these tools help you do server analysis. And again, like this is the technique you're using, and this is the tool for which you're using. The tools might change within next year. There might be a new tool, right? And so you want to be aware of the technique first. Cool. So, you know, these are great kind of thing. You can add more, these other cyber deception. All these techniques are very, and the good thing about Black Hills and SANS is they are a very well-known company which does a lot of like NSA work. You know, they are owned by SANS, which is one of the top security training institutes and things like that. So, you know, a lot of these things are tied into like what's current in the industry, and it changes every day. And, you know, in years, it's like a new world, right? So I encourage you to play it. Maybe form a team of 5, 6. It's hard to play with 22 people, but like, you know, I have the link in the slides as well as on Discord. Okay. All right, guys. So cool. I am running a bit late. Is it okay if we run like 10 minutes over today? Anyone has to leave early?
Until what time exactly?
12:10.
That's fine with me.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, great. So that's the game you want to do. Maybe, you know, we'll make some time. And so let's take case of Equifax, right? And so I wanted to specifically pick up the CVE. So the CVE which they were hacked with, this is the vulnerability they didn't patch. I'm just gonna copy it. This particular one, what I want to show you is, you know, for this CVE, you know, what it was rated at. So 563T. Okay.
So Apache
So-
is the database for
What is this?
Apache is a database server, correct?
Yeah, it's a database server. So it was rated at critical. And their IT systems, IT teams didn't patch their servers properly, or didn't patch all of their servers. So whose fault was it? Right, so this is the part of like the threat modeling I want you to be aware, like, oh, you know, it's not just a made up thing, it actually happens in real life. Like, oh, you know, they didn't take a critical CVE seriously, or they didn't, like, you know, drop everything and do it, because of course they were busy with other things, right? And so that's sort of like the thing you want to remember is like, oh, you know, you want to prioritize. You might have a million things going, but you want to tackle your number one like right away. So keep that in mind. Awesome. All right. We did that. Cool. I'm going to cover a few tools very quickly. And you will kind of have these tools in your lab. So we'll do a few tools, and we'll also talk a little bit more about these tools next class. But I just want to give you enough information so you can do your lab for this week. The lab's pretty straightforward. So let's talk about the pen testing tools. Okay. We talked about types of pen tests last time. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So Nmap is the first one. So Nmap, and at the end of it, I'll give you a short like demo where maybe talk about these few tools. Nmap. So Nmap stands for Network Mapper. You know, it's open source. It has a lot of packs. What it lets you do is, you know, given an IP address or a range of network, it helps you find out what services and ports are on that machine. Okay. Nmap has a whole bunch of command types. That's kind of what your lab is going to go through. So you practice different types of commands. So there is a synsync. And these are the type of scans you can do with Nmap. There is a TCP scan, UDP scan, SCTP scan, and an aggressive scan -A. But usually what you want to just start with is Nmap and then IP address. And it could also be a range of IP. You can also do a subnet. But keep in mind, the biggest thing with Nmap is this command sometimes takes a long time. Doesn't matter if your machine is fast or slow. The thing is it's waiting on is the network. It's not your CPU it's waiting on that. And I know some people were complaining, oh, I have a fast machine. How come it's taking so long? It's not your machine. The problem is it's going on the network. So you want to use the most efficient form of a command to do what you're trying to do, right? And so that's one of the things you will learn about in the lab. So if you want to kind of do a faster Nmap, there is a type of scan, and the switch for it is called T. So if you do Nmap -T and a number, 5 means like do a really fast scan. I'm okay if you like, you know, if you go fast. So usually if you see Nmaps like just sitting there or any command sitting there, go on internet and try to search, oh, how do I run this command faster? Usually there is a switch in that command which lets you do a faster, it's a little bit inaccurate, or it's a little bit like glossing over things, but it might be sufficient for your purposes, because sometimes it can sit there for days, you know. So if Nmap, the fastest scan you can do is -T5. And a lot of times I just do T5 because I know it's gonna take a long time otherwise. So that's other switch you want to be aware of. So, we talked about type of scan switch, these types of scans, and then we talked about speed of switch. So those two things you want to be aware of and map. Okay. Cool. We'll cover Nessus next time as well. So Nessus is kind of like a bigger brother of Nmap. It is now owned by a company. So it's not as free as it used to be. But what Nessus does is it scans a whole network and finds vulnerabilities in the network. So you can just point it to your company's network or your home network and say, hey, Nessus, can you find all the vulnerabilities in my network? And it will use Nmap under the hood, a whole bunch of other things, and try to give you a list of possible findings in your network. How true or untrue they are, it's for you to kind of validate. But that's what it does. And so in Kali Linux, Nessus is part of there, and you will see a scan. In your lab for this week, it's an optional lab. If you want to try Nessus, you get 20 bonus points. So, but we'll cover it next time too. Typically, it gives the vulnerabilities in this kind of like list. It's going to say, oh, in your network, the Adobe Creative Cloud has not been patched. And what it does is for each of your services and points in your network, it'll go and probe the CVE database and see, oh, is the patch applied or not applied? Is the port open or closed? Is there so it has its kind of way trying to you can think of it as like it's trying to do an automated pen test for you. Cool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So from Nessus, you will get a report like this. Again, the tool, it's just a tool. The technique is more important. And a lot of times, the information you get from here is not very good or not very actionable. You want to be cognizant about it. There is no tool or thing which is going to solve everything for you. Cool. All right. And I'll kind of talk this is an example of the Adobe vulnerability. So Nessus will kind of let you do an automated Nmap and more for like a whole network range. Okay, so keep that in mind. Go ahead, Anthony. You have a question?
Can we do Nessus on our virtual machine? Work on
Yeah.
our like our personal IP address?
Yeah, you can. You can.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, you can point it. So again, like other thing, remember from our ethics last time, don't point this on things you don't have permission of, right? Especially these automated tools, because they will potentially get you into trouble. So only do these in your own setup, right? Okay. Andrew, yeah, go ahead. Question? Go ahead. I think you're on mute.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I did a quick Nmap on -T5, which is the fastest speed on my local host. And I do see a TCP port that is open, like 10243. It says unknown. Does that mean I should close that port?
Yeah, or there might be, you have what machine you have?
I have a PC, Microsoft Windows 10.
Yeah, there might be an application which is running audit, but yeah, you can close it and see if anything's not working on your machine.
Okay, thanks.
So, and you can also then search for tools which try to figure out, it's hard to find which application is using which port, but you can do it sometimes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Be careful,
yeah.
it might be Zoom.
You probably use Wireshark, right?
Yeah, but usually Zoom doesn't go to that high, right? I think the ports, I'm not sure. I'll find out.
Yeah, no, it's not Zoom. So yeah, so it's something like that. So that's like great. So sweet. So the next tool I want to talk about is Metasploit. So we talked about, and this is a hierarchy of tools, right? Nmap is like really command line, really powerful, but you have to kind of do a whole lot. Nessus is like kind of does the vulnerability finding for you, but Metasploit is like a whole new level. It actually not only does that, but it also can attack and get you into machines. So Metasploit is just not one tool, but it is a platform of tools, a library of tools. What it lets you do is take a machine and find its vulnerabilities, gets all the things which we did in the pentest lab. Metasploit has the capability to do it all automated. If you do it right. So you can find the vulnerability, and then you can do privilege escalation, and then you can also connect and maybe put a reverse shell on the machine. So all of that can be done in Metasploit. It's very powerful, but it's very dated sometimes, and it's a hard to use tool sometimes. But it automates the whole attack chain. And the way to use Metasploit is you run Metasploit, and it gives you like a prompt MSF, and then in the prompt there is like a whole language of its own. You can, like, I encourage you to kind of, and your lab is going to give you some problems, and you walk through the Metasploit things, and it's pretty easy. But you kind of type help, it will give you all the commands. If you want to do MySQL, you kind of search for MySQL, and these are all the types of modules they have, and you load a module. You kind of, once you can kind of find information from info command on that module, and you use that module by the use command. So help is info module name, to use is use module name. And so once you get into the module, some modules have like specific commands. So you can say exploit, and you give it the host number, host IP or DNS, and it will try to exploit. And so when you say exploit, it is going to do the things like hashcat, all of those sort of things automated if that module does it. So that's like the power of it. It tries to automate the kill chain for you. And once you exploit it, you can kind of look at it inside it. Okay. So Metasploit, and I'll kind of quickly show you how Metasploit works, and your lab will walk you through Metasploit. It's a pretty straightforward lab, so I encourage you guys to kind of look at it. So keep in mind, like we covered Nmap, Nessus, which does automated like vulnerability, and Metasploit, which does the whole gamut automated if you want to, but it's hard to work, and it takes also it's also a little bit dated. So that some of the techniques it uses are dated. They've been like so it's hard for Metasploit to keep up with new techniques and new defenses. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Okay, keep that in mind. So the last tool I want to talk today about is SQL Map. And what SQL Map does is it helps you find a different class of problems. And these are very specific problems with the databases. And this kind of comes back to the thing Craig brought up, like, oh, what if someone is able to hack into the web server and get into our database and get all the data of all our customers, right? And so that's what SQL Map does. So what you do in SQL Map is very simply to SQL Map, it's like a Nmap, but it only tries to find all the open things, all the exploits possible in a SQL database server. So, you scan your database for vulnerabilities using SQL Map. Your lab does include SQL Map today. And so it's very similar to Nmap in that sense. You do SQL Map and IP of your database server. And it will try to tell you all the possible, things which are bad with it. And here is an example where, I gave it like, the IP 10. 0.0.101, and it found, oh, you know, there is a critical vulnerability and this particular database where, you know, you can inject, you can do SQL injection on it. So it will tell you, it will sort of tell you things. The way to run is, you know, you kind of do Python SQL map.py-u and then, you know, the URL of your database. So this is again a straightforward one. It doesn't have as many kind of flags as Nmap, but it's quite similar to Nmap in that sense. Okay, it'll help you enumerate, and you can kind of, you know, figure out the tables in the database. You can probably crack into the database, find passwords of the database, but it's very specific to database. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Cool. We will cover this moving forward. Someone kind of bring up, you know, how do you secure yourself? I'll kind of quickly cover that. You know, if nothing else, do these three things. Make sure you use a password manager, like, you know, like Google Password or Apple or 1Password. Be aware of like vulnerabilities in the password manager too, but use a password manager. Don't have the same password for every website. It's just a recipe for you know, getting pawned or owned. Use do not track in your browser. I use here uBlock. There is a whole bunch of other things you can use. I recommend using a do not tracking software like uBlock. And then make sure you are aware of phishing, like, you know, anyone wanting to be like, you know, part of your you know, being your friend or asking for money or like asking you to click on links, be aware of those. So those three things, be aware. So for your personal security, let me quickly give you a taste of all the tools we talked about, which will be in your lab. I know we're going to go 10 minutes over today. That was all the content for today. So in your, and the labs are, again, you can just do it, you know, with the Try Hack Me account you have. I'm showing you these tools in Kali Linux. So Nmap, you know, you kind of open up Nmap we talked about, and you can kind of do the command I like the most. Nmap is -s -s version, and I do T5, and then you give the IP address. So, you know, I'm just going to give you an example of that, and you know, it'll give you this sort of thing. So you run it as sudo as a super user, and it'll scan the hosts and things like that. So this is an evolved version of it, but you don't really need something like that. Your lab will kind of give you a whole bunch of ways in which you can use Nmap, but you can just do like a IP address like that, and that's fine too. So Nmap and an IP address. Okay, that's Nmap. The next one we covered is Nessus. So it's not in Kali by default. So you have to install it. It's again optional in your lab, so don't worry about it. So the way to kind of get Nessus on your Kali is go to Nessus. If you were doing in Nessus, and that's why I kind of made it optional. So you have to go and install Nessus. And I'll show it to you guys next time. So download Nessus from Tenable on your Kali, and then kind of go through a couple of your things, and you can use Nessus in Kali. You can, if you want as a stretch goal, you can try it this week, but we'll discuss it next week, week after next, on Nessus. Let's take the next example we talked about was Metasploit. And so Metasploit is in Kali. It's also on attack box. It's there. And so, you know, if I open up Metasploit, it's going to first say, oh, first time you run, it's going to say creating database, things like that. It will start Metasploit. Okay. And here you can kind of see I am in Metasploit shell. It is a very powerful tool. It automates the whole kill chain. You use help, and so you can kind of set the remote host to this, to the IP you are trying to run. It has some conventions you can do, but you don't really need to. You can just use IP addresses like that. You can let me just go in here and see the Metasploit commands, which are in here. Okay, yeah, you can search for MySQL, for example, right? That so it's going to show all the modules you can load. You can say info module. Let's say this is the most recent one, the move it exploit. Which just was in the news last few weeks actually. So it's already in Metasploit. So you can do info on the module, which does that exploit all automated. And so it will tell you how to do that move it exploit automated, and you can use it. You can kind of go to that module, which does that whole exploit. It's basically a script which does all the exploit automated. And it's saying, oh, now I am in there, and you can kind of now run this whole exploit automated in Metasploit. So the whole kill chain is there. But again, it's not complete. It's not like, there. And the last one is SQL map. And so SQL map is also part of Kali. It's also part of the attack box. And so it's asking me, tell me the URL of the database you want to hack. And you just give the database and it'll kind of tell you all the exploits. It's pretty simple that way. So those are the 4 tools we talked about. I'm going to quickly show you your lab. And then that was the content for today. Let me do that. Where are we? Okay. There you go. Okay, cool. All right. Your quiz is live now. It's based on the content from the last week. So I'm going to just show you the quiz first, and then we'll get into the lab here. So the quiz is cryptography. So it's going to ask you some basic computer questions, which we talked about, incident response, and then your cryptography. So it's the quiz has 8 questions. It's due by Sunday 10 p.m. So you got a couple of days to do the quiz. It will be open right now. And then your lab is due 2 weeks from now. There's no class next week, but 2 weeks from now, your lab 3, I'm going to make it live. It is now live. Okay. And your lab is basically these 3 things. NSS is optional. You don't have to do Nessus because it's harder to install and everything. But on TryHackMe, there are 3 labs, and the Nmap lab, which has like about 10 to 15 commands on Nmap, they go in complexity level. You can use the hints to get them. So there is the Nmap lab, the Metasploit lab, it's pretty easy, and the SQL map lab. All the 3 labs are pretty straightforward. And if you get stuck, just use the hints, and they are also pretty straightforward. So it'll kind of give you 3 tasks for SQL map. They're pretty straightforward tasks, in the room. It'll give you 3, it will give you 5 tasks for Metasploit. It's also very straightforward. And then it'll give you about, I think, 15 tasks for Nmap. It'll cover the type of scans, some NAC scripts and things like that. If you have any questions, just use, the all of these tasks have the hints. You can use hints. It'll go, the hints will pretty much give you the answer to if you're stuck. So these are simple labs. I encourage you to just do them, and you should be able to do all of them. Okay, unlike the last lab, these are straightforward. Okay, so that's for this class. I think we are 3 minutes over. I know I said we're gonna go a few minutes over. Let me see if our guest today is gonna be able to join us. I think he's on here. Vasil, are you on here with us?
Yes, sorry, I was just trying to unmute myself.
Okay, awesome. So we have a guest with us today. Our guest is Vasil Bakalav. He has about 20 years of experience in the technology industry, but most of his career he worked at Microsoft. Vasil, like 15 plus years at Microsoft, right? He is expert in Windows operating system, and I wanted you guys to kind of talk to him. He can share a few things about his experience as a software professional. He's kind of done the whole span from developing software to fixing bugs to to operationalizing it, finding security vulnerabilities, things like that. So I'll have Vasil talk to you guys for 5 minutes, and 5 minutes or 10 minutes as per your time, Vasil. I'll also have his LinkedIn here in case you guys wanna connect with him on LinkedIn. So
Thanks, Viber, for the intro. Yeah, I think probably in 5 minutes I cannot cover like a whole bunch, but thank you, Viber, for inviting me here to meet your class. I can definitely introduce myself. I can like mention some of the I think interesting problems that I've seen in the workspace, and especially maybe the less expected ones. And then, yep, like Vibe said, after that, I'm happy to connect with anybody who wants to like double click on any of the topics that we discuss, or if there's any kind of generic question specifically to Microsoft in incident response and vulnerabilities. But yeah, so basically I joined Microsoft. It was 2006, so about 17 years ago. That was the time when Windows Vista was the hot new operating system. So yeah, a while back, basically. And that's kind of the time when I think Microsoft figured out, hey, there's a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in the operating system, and it's quite costly to address those and to deal with these security issues on one by one basis. So that's when Microsoft came up with something they call the security development lifecycle, where basically all the security considerations were brought like well early into the development cycle. So up until that point, it was more of an afterthought. Security was more of an afterthought. It's like, okay, let's ship the features. Let's worry about how secure the code is later on. But that whole, I think, initiative was coming, I think, kind of around that time, probably 2005, 2006. And that was supposed, to change the security game and to make, Windows a lot more secure. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm joining Windows security, and this is when the SDL is coming into place. So probably it's going to be a lot of those security issues will be solved over time, and then maybe it's going to become a little bit more boring space, because like once there's not that many security exploits, maybe that's not going to be like such a hot field like it used to be. And then that turned out to be like not the best projection I've ever done. I think one part of the security development lifecycle was, for example, the static analysis that started to become very widely used. and that eliminated like a whole classes of issues like buffer overruns and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, maybe that was kind of a one big chunk of all the security issues out there. Maybe now they're gonna decrease, right? But then after that, things like return-oriented programming came into being, right? So now the attackers kind of shifted and said, okay, Microsoft, you fixed your buffer overruns, but what else we can do, to still exploit the code? So then the return-oriented programming came into being. We saw a whole bunch of exploits on that in the operating system, in the browser, and specifically in Internet Explorer. I think there's a lot of, mixture between untrusted content coming from the internet and rendering that, and executing a lot of code to process that content as well. So we saw a whole bunch of that. And then Microsoft said, okay, let's do something about that. And that's when we introduced the control flow guard feature, or CFG. And control flow guard is basically, I'm not sure if folks are familiar with that one or not, but it is basically preventing random returns from a method into the middle of another function. So the idea is like, okay, the return statement should not allow you to return to some random place that is not expected to be called. And then we're like, okay, maybe that was gonna solve a lot of the problems, and it's gonna make it much harder to hack now the operating system. But then that also turned out that like the more defenses you build, the more workarounds that the attackers are gonna find. And after that, and so even control flow guard, that could not solve like every single problem, because that required every single binary in Windows to be recompiled. And lo and behold, it turns out that Microsoft does not even have the source code for all the binaries in Windows. Some of them are acquired, some of them are coming from third-party vendors. So even if when you know the solution to like the technical solution to a problem, it's still not easy to apply that 100%. There's still binaries in there to this day that are not completely protected, right? And as an attacker, of course, you just need to find one of those or a few of those to attack. But as a defender, you have to defend all of those. So that's hard. So another kind of recent development there was the shadow stack, right? So we have more modern PCs come with a hardware feature called the shadow stack, which when enabled, completely prevents, overriding the stack and changing where functions return and all that stuff. And so that's another thing you say, okay, maybe problem is solved now. We have the shadow stack that's going to make sure that nobody can tamper with the return value. So again, probably, rest in peace ROP, that it's no longer a problem. But it turns out, that's hardware specific feature, and a lot of a lot of devices don't have that hardware feature, right? Don't have that hardware stack. So I think in the interest of time, I think I'll probably just kind of short circuit and say, there's many solutions that we've done at Microsoft to solve these problems, but attackers keep finding problems. And what we see is, wherever Microsoft announced the biggest bounties, that's where a lot of the areas where researchers start looking, and that's where they found the vulnerabilities. So pretty much vulnerabilities are still everywhere. Attackers still get creative, so it's still a very interesting, challenging space. I have a lot of anecdotes. I have a lot of interesting security bugs I've worked on, interesting security features that I've worked on. And yeah, like Vibe said, I'm happy to connect or come back or share more resources offline. So yep, I can keep in touch with Vibe, and we can figure out how to introduce some of that content to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wassel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I know we're 10 minutes over, but maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions from you guys if you guys want to stick around. I'm happy, or Wassel has maybe 3-4 minutes more, so we can kind of take 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, hi Vasil, nice meeting you. This is Andrew. Would you say it's harder to be a defense cybersecurity person than attack once?
That's a great question. To be honest, I haven't been that much on the offense. Like I think ever since I joined the company, I've been more on the defense side. I can tell you it can be very frustrating for sure to spend years on the defense, because you build feature after feature, you spend a lot of toil to make sure everything is working correctly, and then attackers still were able to exploit it. So it can be frustrating at times. But I think a lot of us, just over time, we get into this mindset. It is a constant, cat and mouse game, and we don't have, I think, the expectation that, okay, yes, we have this new security feature and it's kind of done deal, then we can declare victory, So I think, given the right mindset, I think being on the defense is a lot of fun. It just has to be, it has to be taken as a marathon, not as a sprint of yeah, you can go and check all the boxes, So I think it's for me, it's been very rewarding working on the defense side, definitely. But I think, yeah, you're making, I think, a good point, because there's a lot of limitations that you have to work with on the defense side. So, for example, you're not allowed to break backwards compatibility. So even if you see, okay, there's some vulnerability in the code, but a lot of applications are written, with the assumption that the code works that way. Well, you can of course fix the code, but then that's going to break a whole bunch of software, right? And then of course, like we mentioned already, there's the hardware aspect of it. Maybe you have a new feature in mind that's going to make the operating system more secure, but if it requires new hardware, then okay, you have to wait until the devices, get this kind of hardware. So there's a lot of frustrations. There are a lot of, it's kind of, you're working with your hands tied behind your back a little bit. But I think it's very rewarding. And for example, to give you, like, I guess one of the highlights that we had is after we shipped Control Flow Guard, we celebrated 1 year without any vulnerability, any critical vulnerability in Internet Explorer after that. So it took 12 months, for folks to react to that, to find other ways to break it. And I think we all felt really good at it. For 1 year, there was like not even one critical bug in IE.
Great. Yeah, I remember the Log4j. I think they're owned by Microsoft now, right? They fix some exploit on the patches of Log4j, the library, and then
yes,
Apache, and then they introduce some vulnerability, so they have to have several patches after that.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So what is the most challenges about the security defense as your experience working for 20 years in Microsoft?
Sure. So I'll combine that question with, I think Zach has his hand over. So maybe Zach, why don't you go ahead and we can combine both questions.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Vassils, thank you for sharing that with us. I can see you have, a lot of experience working with Microsoft. So I just came up with a question. Like, I'm wondering, like, how does Microsoft usually approach incident response within its own infrastructure? Like, are there any unique strategy or tools that the company employs or use?
Okay, cool. So two questions, Vasil, for you. One's it was Michael you were asking. Sorry. The first one was
The challenges, yeah.
challenges, and then the second is Microsoft specific security tools.
Sure. So on the challenges, I think I kind of touched a little bit upon that. I think the biggest challenge that I think I guess you're asking more from Microsoft side, but I think it's pretty universal. That you have to defend everything, but then the attackers, just have to find one loophole. So that's I think a big challenge. A little bit more Microsoft specific challenge, I would say, is for example, with certificates. There was back in the day, Stuxnet and Flame, where there were certificates stolen from third-party root CAs, right? So basically, Microsoft has like a few hundred trusted root authorities in Windows, and we maintain that list of who is allowed to be giving code signing certificates for signing software. And we've had cases where these third-party root certificates are hacked or exploited, or somebody has access to their key temporarily, right? So that's been like a very challenging thing for Microsoft, is to make sure that the whole ecosystem is protected, because out of those few hundred CAs, it's only enough to hack like one of those, or two of those, and then you have code signing access on Windows, and that was exploited in Stuxnet, that was exploited in malware. We've had cases like there was the Dutch certificate provider called DigiNotar, and it was doing a lot of certificate issuance for the Dutch government. The only problem is they had pretty lax security to protect the infrastructure. So their certificates got stolen. Some of the root certificates got stolen, and we had to disallow those certs. And at some point, we had such a low confidence in that, certificate provider, that we just decided to blacklist them altogether, and they went out of business. So, Microsoft being this company, it has the challenge of not only protecting our own assets, but also protecting, what we allow others to bring to the table. Now, in terms of tools, there are a lot of Microsoft internal tools for security scanning, for incident response. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the tools. I think the tools that Vaibhav was covering in the lecture today, pretty much Microsoft has a number of tools on its own that they're kind of doing similar things which the industry standard tools are doing. And then in the last few years, I have seen a lot of mind shift in Microsoft to use more open source stuff, to contribute to open source stuff, because I think they have realized that the more the whole ecosystem is protected, the better it is for Microsoft. I can share some of those offlines to maybe to Vaibhav if I see something that is worth calling out. But it's whatever you can imagine, like scanning for performing static analysis, looking for vulnerabilities. There's some internal tools like that, and I'm happy to share like some of those to Vaibhav maybe offline.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much, Vasil. Really appreciate staying a bit longer, and sorry everyone for going a bit over today.
Great to meet you guys, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much again.
Thank
you everyone,
Thank you.
and a round of applause, and thank you for Vasil. We will not have class next week. It's a long weekend, or it's a public holiday. So we will meet on February 23rd. The quiz for today is live, and then the lab is also live. The lab is not due until February 23rd, actually, so I'm gonna update it. So the lab is due February 23rd. If you have not submitted lab 2, I am going to open it up and extend it until next week as well, so you can give it a shot again. If you have submitted it and you want to update it, feel free to update it as well. So I'm gonna reopen the lab too. Cool. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Go ahead.
I have question for you, Mr. Professor Band. My question is about when I open my page and I search like there is something stuck. It wasn't be running when I start attack box. It's not gonna be running because it took a long time, as that is the picture I sent it to you. So I don't know what is the exact reason for that.
So I would say, try post your exact problem on Discord, and we can try it offline, and try to use the Discord, because it's lot likely I don't have your setup, so it's very hard for me to try to figure out what's going on your machine.
Okay.
Someone who probably has a setup like that can say, but most likely I'm going to say like maybe it's something to do with your browser. So maybe try to use like a Firefox or Chrome. Try a different browser with attack box, like how you guys saw in the class today. For me, it is a little bit finicky, so it has its mind of its own sometimes, but it does work. And so, if it is not working one time, try again. That's the other part. And if you're stuck with the tag box, and if you want something more dependable or something which is like, you can have it for a longer time, then I encourage trying to go the Kali Linux route. So just install Kali Linux and do OpenVPN.
I installed the Kali Linux. I have the Kali Linux, since that is last lecture is that when you say if you want is install the Kali Linux, yes, I did. And I said so only about that because in the first week when I open it, it is working very well. And I was be able to see everything and things like that. After that, I created my room, and I says like still when and I'm trying to open it, they give me the like this is a machine, they give me the IP address, but when I start on the attack, I just see it's like my machine is not running. And I try several
Yeah, make a video of what's going on and post it on Discord. That might be the easiest. So, different people can also take a look. They might have a similar setup. Why don't you make a video and post it on Discord? How about that?
I will record by my mobile and then send it if it's happening for me again. If it's open, it's okay. If it doesn't be open with me, I will be recorded and then I'll send it to you before.
Not me. Send it on the Discord channel. Don't ask individual questions because primarily, like, I have bandwidth for only so many questions. So that's why we have the class channel. So that way, if sometimes I can't get to it, someone else from the class would be happy to help. And I've been seeing really great interaction on Discord. So send it on Discord class channel, not individually to me. Send it on CIS 55 channel.
Yeah, that is where I yesterday sent it a picture, and someone is say, hey, this is the area is not for your homework to send there. I told him I'm just sharing. That is a kind of problem. Maybe someone knows more than me and say this is problem like that, but it's not for any issue. Anyhow, I'm going to trying to see how it's going on. And maybe if this work with me this time, I will be happy. If it's not working, I will keep trying and record everything, and then I will share with people.
Yeah, share it on the Discord, the class Discord. It's fine. It's fine to share on the Discord. It's fine if it is now personal information. It's completely fine to share more on Discord. Okay.
The issue, Mohammed, is that I think you shared in the wrong channel. You shared, I think, in the introductory channel. You didn't share in our class channel.
Because that is where is my name is show up, because those people before they were with me, mister.
So I think there is a lot going on here, Mohammed. I think, you want to take it slow and step by step from the first class and follow the instructions. So you see the CIS 55 channel here on the screen. That's where you want to post. I don't see your name here, and that's kind of where is the thing. You posted it on the introductions channel here, I think somewhere. That's what it looks like what happened. This is the channel for the class CIS 55, and you will see here like a lot of people have helped each other.
That's me.
Amazing. Yeah, so put it on CIS 55.
Yeah, I put it one picture is there. It's mine. I saw it there. If you go up a little bit, go up, that yes, that is mine. That is the top one is mine. A little bit, yeah, both this one and the top one. This is what is work with me when I
you are connected to, look here, you are connected to the OpenVPN from your Kali. He's showing here.
Yeah, this is the first one. Go up a little bit. You can go up. This one, look, when I hear the same word is the person is a make a light. That is not mine. The down one is mine. The top one, when I start the attack, that is the command, it should be running for me. And the command, it couldn't be running. I waiting long time and I tried to guessing, but it wasn't be open.
Try again.
Okay.
It should, you know, that's a straightforward. It should work. If it doesn't, like, shut everything, try again. It
Okay.
is, it could sometimes be finicky. But
Okay.
again, like, you know, keep in mind, right, you know, you have to get the setup yourself, right? Like, and so you, and use this Discord channel and ask questions here. Okay. Cool. And I see Craig's. Thank you, Craig, for being so active on the Discord. That's very helpful. And everyone else who is very active, you will get bonus points for being active on Discord. So thank you. It's great for you guys, for me to see that you're helping each other. That's the whole intention. So yeah, and here, like how Craig is pointing out, this is great. Like, you know, you basically, some people probably didn't, it wasn't obvious for them to which was the machine they are attacking and from which machine they were attacking. So this is clear. This is the attack box after you start your room's machine, right? So keep that in mind. So yeah, keep trying with it. You know, do the labs on Try Hack Me. Again, like, I want to be also very clear, because for a lot of people this is their first time they're doing all this, and so it might be confusing. It might be like, oh, you know, this is too much. Don't worry about it. There is, like, you know, a starting learning curve for everyone in pen test, and even there is always learning in pen testing, or like just in general in computer science. So what you want to be aware is, you document your work. Your assignments are not graded for you getting it right or wrong. You are graded on your work. And so make sure, like, you know, you put in all the screenshots you worked on, all the commands you ran. Even if you don't get the answer right, you know, but if you did spend the time to learn it, you will get grades. You know, there's not a pass and fail like in the assignments. You will be scored for your effort, not for getting it right. So put in the effort. And you know, it's okay to feel a bit confused or things not working sometimes, because that's completely expected, and that's the journey.
Okay.
Because you all are starting at different levels. But I want to make sure people have enough to do for all different types of levels. So keep doing it.
Okay. Thank you. And the other things there, I saw
Uh,
like the optional one is working with me very well, but except this is the one where is obligation. I saw this is the problem. But the other one, in the other side, when and I'm doing the practice, is working very helpful.
Yeah, and you know, that's the part you yeah, just be at it. If you're asking questions, ask
Okay.
questions thoroughly, show your work, and then ask the question. It's very hard for someone to just say, oh, my stuff is not working, because no one knows your machine. Your machine is your machine. So you have to be able to show your problem. So what I'm and we'll kind of end at that. So when you ask questions, be thorough on showing your work. You know, also show your work in your assignments.
Okay.
And it's okay to get it, not get it. That's completely fine. It doesn't apply to Moham, but to everyone. So keep that in mind. It's okay. It's okay to it's okay not to get answer or feel a bit confused, because it is, you're starting from scratch. This is sort of journey, but put in the time, put in the effort, and you will come out learning something from this.
Okay. Perfect.
Awesome. All right, guys. We are quite a bit over right now, so I'm gonna pause and wrap up here, and I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Keep asking questions on Discord. I will get to things as well, but I'm also seeing a good set of other people being active, so you know, make full use of that. All right, guys. I'll see you in a couple weeks, and have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate that.
Good. Thank you.